Welcome to Growth Colony, Australia's B2B growth podcast. I'm Alex Hipwell. Each episode, we bring you B2B founders, CMOs, marketing, and sales leaders to find out what makes them successful and what's behind their failures. Let's dive right into today's episode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Growth Colony. I'm Shahin Hoda with X Growth, and today I'm talking to Justin Smith, CMO at Ansanada, about how to create a personality for your B2B brand and stand out in saturated markets.
No worries. Good to be here.
Justin, for those who might not be familiar with yourself or Ansanada, can you give us a quick background and intro?
Yeah, Ansanada is a fintech business. We help companies raise, protect, and realize their potential. And that can be all sorts of forms of utilizing technology to help them on their journey. When they come to a critical juncture in their business, so that could be raising capital through equity or cash, or it could be a merger and acquisition, or it could be an IPO, or it could be a divestiture, all sorts of transactional natures. We provide technology such as virtual data rooms and a complete platform that helps companies on their complete life cycle. So everything in their information governance, from, as I said, an M&A to a CFO using us for doing their audit and keeping their information always on, always relevant, and always ready to act if an opportunity should strike. So we create, we think we've got the world's best fintech technology that helps advisors and their companies and their advisors realize that potential. That's through all sorts of AI technology, sifting through your documents, understanding how bidders are looking at your documentation, helping companies in this time of need. So we see huge waves of the trends that happen in business. You really see on our platform. So we know past there's a lot of raising capital through equity, trying to survive these challenging times, to waves of insolvency. They all utilize our platform to share that information, that due diligence, to third parties. So that's us in a nutshell.
Very fascinating. And give us a little bit of background about yourself. I know you have a very interesting background.
Yeah, I'm probably not what you call a traditional marketing background, CMO. I've sort of worn a lot of hats. Started out more in the creative field. My career has been divided into two parts, whereas really in the UK and in Australia, I've been working in agency land as an advisor for 15 of my 30 years of the career, and working on the corporate side on the inside as well. I've owned an agency, marketing agency and creative agency for 10 years. Exited that. I've owned fitness businesses with the Commando, who was Channel 10's fitness pro. We had a fitness platform for some time, and now helping on the inside. Is a really great challenge, because in the agency land, you're often advising, and you're building brands and you're advising on strategy. But really, you're not really living it each day as you do on the inside. And that's where I sort of shifted to the corporate side to feel that challenge, thrive in that challenge, and help businesses on the inside, because I believe brands are lived from the inside. So it's been over about 30 years. I've helped some of the world's leading brands, such as Visa and Molton Brown in the UK, to the blue chip Australian customers in Australia, and now into technology and fintech.
And now Ansanada. I really like that. And that was the main reason that I wanted us to have this chat, because of your creative background. And now, really working in a B2B fintech, in the B2B fintech scene, because I feel like in the market, there are a lot of B2B brands that are absolutely bland. And if you kind of take the logo off their website or some collateral of theirs, you can't really tell the difference. Why do you think there are so many bland B2B brands out there?
Well, I always believe marketing is only as boring as the team executing. It's about, I look at not the word bland, but I look at the opposite of that is being distinct. Is the key to to anything. People talk about differentiation. I talk about distinction, because the opposite of bland is distinction. And people are probably bland because, a whole era of risk adverse was traditionally in the space of B2B. It wasn't seen as the sexy part of being marketing. B2C was always the sexy part, where you could be irreverent, you could be flamboyant, you could engage with people. But if we look at that, they're dealing with humans. They're dealing with the new generations of how they're going about, just like B2B. B2B is selling to a person. So I think it comes from a heritage of risk, of the old days of suit and tie. Most B2B were public companies, so reporting to shareholders, which were, was seen as, you didn't want to be standing out and being distinct. You wanted to be accountable in a way that didn't stand out. It was bland. You didn't really want to be standing out in a public market. So I think it comes from that day. And I think maybe for me, a lot of that B2B marketing, a lot of weight is on the go-to-market team. So there's a lot of responsibility that goes with supporting a business, from influencing the whole customer's buying journey, from the behaviors to driving retention, advocacy, revenue. And I think that responsibility has driven risk. And risk averse people drive blandness. You don't want to be distinct. You don't want to stand out. I think that's been it's gone over time. And, I actually encourage other competitors to be bland, because there's only enough distinction that can happen. So you need bland players. But yeah, I think that's the reason why it comes about. And I think, if we go forward thinking about distinction, everybody's got a blog, everybody's on social, everybody's on video, everyone's doing podcasts. So what makes you distinct? And I think people get mixed up with they think they need to be different, and different can be copied. Distinction cannot be copied, I believe. And that's the key to standing out amongst the blandness, is what makes you distinct. And you have to work out and define that, encourage that, nurture that, to really stand out in the sea of blandness.
I really like that. I really like, I was going to ask, why is it important for B2B brands kind of to have a personality? And you kind of frames it as distinctiveness, which is, that also recent discussion of distinctiveness versus differentiation, which is, I think, is also a very, very important conversation. You kind of brought it up. Why do you think differentiation and distinctiveness is more important than differentiation? The marketers have always been talking about differentiation, right? What is your differentiating, attributions? What is your unique value proposition, right? That is going to differentiate you from everybody else. Why do you think the distinction is more important than differentiation?
Whether it's more important is probably, I think it's more, how many can be different now? How many can really be truly different? There's probably a handful of, when we see someone, renegades go into a market and challenge that market and turn it upside down. There's a few players that play like that. And then the 97 other percent, what do? That's why distinction is really important, because can be only so many disruptors. Everybody wants to be a disruptor, a number of years ago, and being different and disrupting. But I feel that you can actually succeed being distinct. And the majority, that don't really have a different product from their competitors. They're going to be doing it through their distinction of their brand. And you talked about personality. I think they're hand in hand when you talk about the modern day brand, and personality is the same thing. Personality is brand. What was his name? Mark Benoff of Salesforce. He talked about that brand is their greatest asset at Salesforce, because you can copy the stats, you can copy the speed, you can copy the product, the price, the quality even. But what you cannot copy is a brand, and brand is personality and your distinction that goes in. Because I think about brand as a living entity. It's everything cumulatively over time, 1,000 gestures happening each and every day. It's like how you answer the phone, how you write an email. What does your brand identity look like? What does your advertising say? Your website? Endless customer success conversations that happen. All of that together, orchestrated together, is what makes strong brands distinct. And I think a lot of people get mixed up with brand as the visual identity and that element, but it's I call it a living entity. It's hard. We haven't cloned humans yet, have we? Really? We were trying, but it's really hard to copy that distinction and that personality of what makes a brand. I think that's where I see the difference between distinction and differentiation is you can be different through being distinct. And I think that's where we should be looking at playing, because we're looking at a total different buyer now than when I started 30 years ago. The B2B buyer is completely different. You look at the pipelines, I think they're shrinking. The pipes are shrinking because the customer is already doing their own research. They're making their own calls to their colleagues. They're investigating your presence in the marketplace, investigating far more than you ever have control before. And then they're making a decision before they talk to a salesperson or before they go and e-com. They've already got it in their mindset. That's the new challenge. And that's why I read the studies that when we first came about and we first met, Les Burnett's study on B2B marketing and the difference between sales, the perfect balance between sales activation and brand building. I live and breathe this because I think it is the future of how B2B brands will thrive. We're in a different buying space. We've got different generations coming up. It's completely different. And than when I first started out, and we're in for new challenges. I think people want authenticity.
Yeah.
They don't want to buy off a sales pitch.
Yeah, that you're right. That report was absolutely fascinating when they talked about the 54-46 divide between activation and brand for B2B industry.
Do you ever find yourself stuck with a B2B problem? Need a second opinion on your next campaign? Or looking for some feedback on that piece of MarTech you're thinking to purchase? Well, that's why we created the Growth Colony Slack channel. This Slack channel is like a small dinner party where you get to meet and mingle with B2B professionals, hear what others are doing, and keep up to date with the latest B2B trends and news. You'll also get access to a range of exclusive content from our podcasts, webinars, and events. The best thing about it, it's all free. If this sounds interesting, head over to growthcolony.org/Slack and sign up. That's growthcolony.org/Slack.
Tell us a little bit about how you're going about implementing this and building a personality, building a brand, building distinction in Ansanada.
The first challenge was stripping away all synthetics. So anything that didn't feel real. That's where we started. We went through, I look at the greats like Patagonia and, these brands that have lived on being human and real and talk let's just talk like humans do. Let's not butter it up with a sales pitch on a website that nobody's buying anymore. The new generation's not buying there. I can't remember his name, the Patagonia's founder. He's had one great line that says, writing fiction is much more difficult than non-fiction. And I think that is so true. I worked in the advertising industry for 15 years in creating fiction. I think that's a lot harder to do. What I tried to do when we came into Ansanada is strip away all that, what we thought we should be saying, and let's connect with customers in a way that's real to them. Because An investment banker is my customer, a CFO, a CEO. I promise you, they're looking at Instagram. Their kids are on Glitch watching YouTube and gaming videos. They're buying consumer goods exactly the same way they're thinking about brands in a B2B space. Yeah, the sales cycle's different, but the brand is can be completely the same. So I looked at let's try strip out where we're still not perfect. We're still stripping out things that happen throughout an organization where you be that synthetic style of trying to be what you think the customer wants to hear, and you think that they're of a corporate nature, so you believe that you should write your copywriting like this, or you should have stock photography of somebody shaking hands and doing, those cliche things. I try to strip that away. And one of the initial things that I did when I entered was try to strip away all that sort of synthetic visual stuff, the verbal, and then looked at why don't we communicate our brand through our customer's voice. So I started this thing called the Pathfinder series, and we have a product called Pathways. That's why it was named the Pathways. And I went and created 30 or 40 stories about customers. And now these aren't case studies. These are stories. We've had drones going over surfers. We've been in Thai boxing gyms. We've been everywhere, telling the story of their personal story of the customer, because people buy from other people they respect, and people buy from somebody that they think they relate to. So why not create our whole brand around who our customer is? And showing that an advisor and an accountant, a CFO, a CEO that's in charge of billions of dollars still goes surfing, still goes boxing, still does crafts, whatever they were into. I wanted to highlight that and not be so much of a sell about Ansanada, but a selling about we are about empowering and protecting and our customers. It was all about our customers. So I've tried to create the whole brand around this idea of doing this, and the brand around what is now possible for them being in a relationship with us at Ansanada. And so our driver is now you can. It's a simple colloquial term, is now you can do this, now they can do that, et cetera. And it's raw. We show what's possible now. And that's how I've really tried to transform the brand. The brand assets and the core assets, such as a logo and green, were before my time. I've just harnessed them and said, that's what we should always be. We should have our core assets, and that makes us distinct. And our brand personality, I just added onto the giants that were before me to, make a really distinct brand that in our market, we've got those bland competitors, and I encourage them to continue to be bland. We just re-releasing tomorrow in New York is version 2 of our M&A game. So we created an app that's an M&A game for bankers to play off-site. They compete all over the world. They compete against they grow building, they buy, merge, sell companies on a game app, and it gets published in the New York Times, and it makes us distinct. And that's one of the many things we align with Spotify. We do Spotify playlists with all our customers. We've done cookbooks. We've done all sorts of things that are enhancing their life, definitely in these challenging times. And that's what brand is. Brand is building a relationship, and you're a human personality that's just like other personalities. Some you like to be around, some you don't. And I think in a sea of downloadable white papers, that can really stand out. My challenge was that's a traditional space that you play in B2B and the CAC payback on that. I've gone and advised companies for 20 years to saying that you're going to get 4% conversion, and that could take you 3 to 4 years to get a payback. Why do we continually invest in this? Because we're looking for vanity metrics. We've got to report to boards. Brand is hard to quantify. You can measure search volume, you can measure your share of market. It's a long-term game, and I think it does pay off. Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Brand being a long-term game. I think that's That's one, and being hard to measure in that long-term period, right? How do you go about educating people? How did you go about educating the team that you were supposed to sell this? That hey, you're not going to get, and like there's not going to be much that's going to come out of this in the first 2 years, maybe 3 years. That's hard for some people. They're like, well, what, I'm going to just buy you on your word for 3 years.
Mm.
Well, what's the process with that? Like, how do you go about and convince someone that they should invest in for that period of time?
Well, I go back to Les Bennett's study. So you can show studies that's done over 15 years of measuring B2B brands and what made them grow. And brand is a proven avenue, aspect, as we know that the ratio that they defined is build in B2B 45%, around 55% on sales activations, those lead gen elements, which you need both. You have to do both. So showing studies, I have the privilege at Ansanada of working with a CEO who's very innovative, who's a disruptor. So I don't have to convince him, but I do have to educate others on how you measure that. So we measure that through measuring our share of voice. You can do that through a number of ways through studies. You can do it through YouTube surveys. We measure that all the time. How many recall seeing our brand and our advertising? We measure in search volumes. So one of the challenges I had when we joined was people were searching for the generic term of our category, which in one of our products is the virtual data room. So then you're competing on PPC and search and your competitors, and it drives up the price, and the only person that makes money is Google. And it can cost you $3,000 a click. It's very expensive. So what we did was we looked at measuring what was the search volumes on Ansanada. Now, we're going to invest in this for the next 6 months on advertising, brand advertising. We're not even going to ask for anything. We're just going to talk about our brand, what our brand is about. We're going to do all these interesting things like align with Spotify. And then we're going to measure again in 6 months. And we had, it was a 20% growth of searching for our term. So now in the Australian market, we have 50% of the search volume searching for our name out of our market, which is a pretty awesome place to be in.
Amazing.
We challenges in other new markets. They're my challenges at the moment. Europe, we're doing well. America, we're a very small player. So I've got the challenges there. It's different types of challenges. So you need to build a brand again in those spaces. And why would I go in looking like the competitors? Why would I go in doing exactly what they're doing? I'm not going to have any distinction. I need to go in and create new features, new distinction, new everything that's going to make me stand out from the players. Or I'm going to go in and be a price player, and that's not what we play. We're a premium product.
Yeah, Justin, where do you get your ideas for distinctive brand moves? Your Spotify move, your the customer founders kind of story. But where do you get these ideas? Do you have a process for kind of developing these ideas, or is it more like the creative side, it just comes to you as you looking at things and you put pieces together? How does it work?
Yeah, I think, creativity comes from a problem. Like for myself, I've always been a creative person, so I've been lucky in that sense of how that comes about. But it's usually facing into the problems. Like talking about creativity is like Spotify and all that is great, and it's more engaging to talk about a podcast. But the metrics and the studies and looking at your segmentation, looking at your market, actually give the problem to be creative to. So, and then doing that, I just hunger, thirst, and thrive on looking at all brands out there, reading books, podcasts such as yourself, anything and everything to consume how others are doing it. And I think we've always been in a tradition in B2B to be saying, I just look at my category, or they're irrelevant to me, they're not in my category, or they're B2C, they're not relevant to me in my category. I think the opposite. I think that's where I want to be looking. I want to be looking and saying, how did they connect so well with that customer? How did they grow that share? I can never copy their distinction, but I can definitely learn from the tactics, or, I'm going to have my own strategy, but I can definitely learn from, creative tactics that can connect with humans. And I think it's just, I've mentioned a few people that I look at. You just look at brands. You just look at how brands and how they thrive, what made them strong. I think what people do is they try copy, and that's not. You've got to find what creative avenue fits the problem. And I think that's where a lot of us go wrong. There's a set system on marketers, their vanity metrics. They've got to report on those. I think the MQL killed creativity, to be honest. In the last 10 years, it's important. I am, as much as I'm creative, I study metrics of how things are being executed, what's not working in the pipe, what's working in the pipe. So you're equally doing that. But I think you get so obsessed with reporting on metrics that kills creativity. That kills what really connects, because if you've got a number you've got to meet, it's about that number, not about connecting with that customer to get that sale or to get that acquisition, whatever your B2B operations is. And look, I'm looking way more now into talking to the category as a brand, and then really honing in on creative executions on personalization. You hear them talking about ABM for a long time, but really that's just marketing. I've always thought it's just a word for marketing, is knowing the personalization. I think I look at that, and I look at other great companies that are doing those two parts of that game, which is making it personal enough that I think it's about me, but making the brand so I feel like I want to align that. That's about what I believe in. I like them. They feel innovative, or they feel safe, whatever it is that you're doing there. And it comes back to being a personality and being distinct.
I really like that. I like that that approach of hyper personalization. The other thing that I wanted to ask you is you've touched on this a little bit. You touched on how you look at brands, how you study them. My question is, what will be your advice to someone who is thinking, who wants to build a proper personality for their brand, right? What will be your advice in terms of where they should start?
I'm going to assume that they've done the fundamentals. So they've done their market research, they've done their segmentation, talking to the customers, and they sort of know where their opportunity is. So I'm going to assume that they've done they know that. They sort of know where there's a positioning. You need to find where is your positioning in that market. Where do you sit in that competitive set? Then what are the needs of that customer? And then you need to fit that personality space. You need to fit that distinction to stand in that space. So I would be defining where you sit against competitors. I do all the fundamentals. And then if you're going to start building your brand, if I think that's your question, is I would look at what makes me distinct. That would be the question I would be saying. What is the personality of this business? And is it, I don't want to use the word authentic, but is it real? Because sometimes we can go, I've done millions of these brand workshops, and we're going to be we're female and with this and with that, and there's a bunch of white-collared men, So you got to, what can you actually really pull off? What is authentic? And I think then hiring people around that are going to be that authenticity, or going to be authentic to what is that positioning that you've done. And then I'd be looking at your visualization of everything. So making sure that is distinct as possible. How many times do you see a brand go into market and it's blue and they're all blue? I just baffled by sometimes some of that. And that's sometimes about fitting in, sometimes that is a tactic. Things, simple things like that, and stick to them. Marketers are tremendously changing from here to there to this. Find what makes your core asset, what makes that, and stick to it, and be as bold as possible in your category, and map that out and live it on everything. So anything that goes out of the place, does that fit what we are about? Like if I look at the guys at Drift, their pricing page, they've got someone talking about the pricing page, how the packaging came about. They're talking about, like I actually look at it and go, oh, it's on the border of very filming, but I like them. I like the personality. And I like what they stand for, and they're just raw and just saying it how it is. And I think that's their spot. You got to find what's your spot. And I think the rise of tech is helping that. So I would, that would be the things you would define that, and then you think about what different tactics can I deliver on my strategy. Looking at different avenues of connecting with people, thinking about the consumers. I like what I got two little girls. I watch what they're watching. I see what they're doing. They completely had a different upbringing to me. As I say, they're watching YouTube, watching gamers play games. And I'm baffled by it. But I'm thinking, hey, I need to be in on that somehow. I got to be somehow in on that, because somehow I'm going to make money out of that somehow. I don't know yet, but I'm looking, going, that's where they're going. And I'm looking at Instagram and the stories, and I'm thinking it's going in a direction that is far away from a white paper as possible. I'm not dishing just white papers. We do them, but it's to the extreme where you got to bank up what are all the pieces of tactics you're doing to what's right for your strategy.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I just look at culture. Culture is constantly moving, constantly changing, and it's exhausting to keep up, to be honest. But why not try? Just, what I just think, what is the worst thing that's going to happen?
That's a good question. That's a great question. What is the worst thing that could happen? And I think a lot of people are scared. A lot of people, I think, exaggerate what the worst case is. And I think a lot of people in the B2B space, just like you said before, they're worried. They're worried of like, hey, am I going to get fired if this goes wrong? And that culture, you're right, the culture is not there. The culture of experiment, it's fine. If it doesn't work, it's all good. But let's be bold. Let's be out there. And the other thing that you mentioned is let's stay consistent. I think that is such a great point that you've made, because, I feel like marketers work with brands for a long time, and we get tired of it, right? We get tired of the green in our logo. And we're like, oh my God, I'm going to do a green again. But what we don't realize is it's only us who experience that so much. The market has no clue that you have a green element in your logo or in your brand. And you have to just constantly push that for people to be like, I've seen that 20 times. I feel like there is a green. I'm simplifying, but I'm associating the color green with this brand, right? I'm associating this kind of feeling, youth with Coca-Cola. That, that was years and years of work and consistency for that mindset to sit in.
Absolutely. That's the thing. You marketers take for granted. They think that every piece of communications or tactics they do, that every consumer sees it, and we're lucky if they see one. That's what I just don't kid yourself. You're not that great. I say to myself, you're not that great. Somebody may know and say, I'm going to smash it down their faces until they've seen it. And just keep at it and keep at it. And you can just vary those tactics to do what it is. And what we do is, once we find something that works, we milk that dry, don't we? So why would we change that? So I'm a big believer in stick to your core assets. People got different words for, I call core assets.
That's amazing. Now, Justin, we covered so much, and you've shed light on so many amazing insights around building personality and building a brand. Is there anything on that topic in the B2B space that you think I haven't covered or we kind of missed?
I think there's more to it than that. I think it's what the challenge people have with B2B is you've got to build your evidence and your argument and stand by that. And I think that's just as about as B2B is a huge part of that is branding internally. So being the inspiration, being the motivator that takes everybody along the ride is really important. You don't ever want to be seen as, oh, here come the marketing people. You've got to be serving everybody in the business. Like I'm in service to giving to sales ops. I'm in service to making the CS they've got good retention. I'm in service to my leadership team to delivering those results that I promise. I'm in service to culture, building a brand so people want to live and come and work in this great culture. You've got to be on the inside and be a celebratory part of the brand internally. And I think if you can get that right, that's where the magic happens. And I think that is probably the biggest challenge of any marketer. We're so concerned with the results on the outside. We're so concerned with meeting the metrics and delivering on that we sometimes forget that it's a living entity, that your sales team are the brand, your CS team, everybody is the brand, and you need to help motivate them. So I think that's the other part I would add is be the internal motivator and live it and breathe it, and don't be deterred. You're always going to get critics. Just like being green, be that same personality and driving it forward. That's what I try to do. I'm not, I'm relatively successful. Sometimes not. Sometimes I aren't. And you've got to find the right company for you that celebrates that, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Okay. Now, look, this is amazing. I took away a lot, and I'm sure a lot of listeners would do the same. Now, if people want to find out more about yourself or Ansanada, what's the best way for them to do so?
You can just connect with me on LinkedIn. Just don't try to sell me anything.
It's the story of LinkedIn these days, right?
You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I think it's the best thing. Or I'm at Depth of Average on Instagram. You can connect with me at there. Justin.smith@ansanada.com and connect with me on email. And,
all right.
I'd love to continue the chats with lots of people. I love connecting with people, and as long as they're not trying to sell me something. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it, Justin. Thank you so much for your time and for being on the podcast.
I recommend one book that people go read.
Yes. Before we wrap up, go on. One last.
One book is "Let My People Go Surfing" by the founder of Patagonia. Let My People Go Surfing, and that'll talk about authenticity and realness. That you'll see how a brand did it. Anyway, that's a good one too.
Oh wow, I haven't heard of that. I'm gonna check this out pretty much after our chat. Thank you very much for that, and thanks again for being on the show.
No problems. Stay safe.
Hey, it's Alex again from X Growth. Thanks so much for joining us on this episode. If you enjoyed it, we'd love it if you take a moment to rate us on Apple Podcasts. It would really help get the word out to other B2B professionals. If you're hungry for more B2B content, make sure to join our Slack channel at growthcolony.org/Slack, where we share the latest B2B news, tactics, tips, and chat about problems we're facing in the B2B space and find solutions together. That's growthcolony.org/Slack. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you in the next episode.